Well, a reported search for legal justification after the fact. Joining me now is Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat on both the House Judiciary Committee and the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. And before I get to that latest headline, I do want to talk to you about the breaking news reported by the New York Times from Defense Secretary Mark Esper, confirming that President Trump ordered the Pentagon not to remove Chief Petty Officer Eddie Gallagher from the Navy SEAL unit. Clearly, this is something the president has a right to do as commander-in-chief, but was it the right move? I want to get your reaction to that.
But you're 2 steps ahead of me on that particular bit of news, so I'd not read about that. But, you know, it's consistent with the way that the president has behaved, which is completely impetuously and erratically and outside of the normal channels. And oftentimes he seems to be at war with his own professional staff. And this seems like just another case of that.
Yeah, just so you know, news breaks every few minutes, so it's not your fault that you weren't able to look at your phone before you came on with us. But that is the latest development we've seen there, and we'll be covering that as well. I want to turn back to the story from the Washington Post, though, and that's the interagency emails exposing what really appears to be a lot of justification from OMB and Mulvaney to withhold military aid for Ukraine. Given what the Post is reporting, what questions does this raise for you?
It raises profound constitutional questions. Remember, the framers set it up so that Congress would have the exclusive power to appropriate money. So we voted $391 million to support Ukraine in its efforts to defend itself against Russia, which was occupying the Crimea and engaged in active military hostilities against the people of Ukraine. The president held that up as part of this political plot to get information that he wanted and to get a statement that he wanted from President Zelensky saying that the Bidens were under investigation. That upsets the constitutional balance of powers and congressional control over spending. There's a law which dealt with this problem called the Impeachment Control Act from 1974. It was adopted after Watergate, where Nixon did something similar. The president's got to come to Congress if he's going to hold up money for any reason and explain why there's a public interest to do so and give Congress the opportunity to either say no or to go along with it. But they just went ahead and held this up for the president's personal political scheming.
And you mentioned that impoundment law in 1974, which requires the OMB to spend money appropriated by Congress by the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal year was just a few weeks away from when that money was finally released on September 11th. Given this new information, are you going to want to hear now from Mick Mulvaney? And we know that the request is out there, but are you willing to wait through what could be months of a courts-long process to hear from him?
Well, we've been waiting for Mick Mulvaney to speak for a long time. Now, of course, he's gone public and essentially admitted to the shakedown, the coerced quid pro quo as the MO of the White House. That's basically their way of doing business. He told everybody to accept it, to get over that. So we know basically what they were up to. He should come forward and speak forthrightly to the committee, but, you know, that's obviously going to be tough to do. The point is that we understand all of the material elements of this plot. The president developed and executed a plan to shake down the Ukrainian government using that $391 million in a White House meeting as the leverage to coerce them to participate in his political plans.
Congress, I want to ask you, as a member of the Judiciary Committee, we know the Intelligence Committee is now wrapping up its report and will be passing it along to you. And you, of course, will be using that as reference for impeachment. What articles of impeachment are you looking at right now from everything that you've seen over the course of the past few weeks?
Well, we're going to wait to get the report from the Intelligence Committee and any other information that's turned over by the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Oversight Committee, to try to assemble all of the facts, inventory them, and to see what patterns emerge. And those committees also may have very specific recommendations about what articles of impeachment might be. This is a good time for us to be reviewing articles of impeachment from the past. In the Nixon case, for example, we saw that there was a claim of obstruction of justice because the president in that case tried to interfere with investigators and prosecutors. There were claims about abuse of power, the abuse of the proper authorities of the president and the different departments of government. And then there was a claim there also about interference with congressional investigation. And there are actually specific dates when there were supposed to be witnesses who were blocked by President Nixon, specific depositions that didn't take place, witnesses that were interfered with, and the evidence that was withheld. So that's a powerful historical analogy for some of the things that we're looking at in this case.
And is there enough evidence? I appreciate that you're waiting for the report, but is there enough evidence that you've seen over the past 2 weeks from the testimony of these 12 witnesses to impeach the president?
Oh, I think that what we saw was not only overwhelming evidence of potential high crimes and misdemeanors, but uncontradicted evidence of high crimes and misdemeanors. You know, we have people like Mick Mulvaney who've come forward, including the president himself, and essentially bragged of the material offenses, that is, shaking down the Ukrainian government. But all of the witnesses who came forward at the pains of perjury, like Sondland and like William Taylor, like Fiona Hill, like Ambassador Yovanovitch, all of them agree as to all of the material elements of this narrative and of these potential offenses. Basically, the president waged this coercive pressure campaign against the Ukrainian government simply to get President Zelensky to come forward to say that the Bidens are under investigation and to validate this discredited conspiracy theory about the 2016 campaign, which was that the Ukrainians and not the Russians had interfered. That's pure Russian propaganda. That is Vladimir Putin's disinformation campaign, which continues to this very day. And yet we even have Republican colleagues who are continuing to repeat that nonsense.
And we're going to be talking about that more later on in the show. Congressman Jamie Raskin, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Delighted to be with you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
And to you too.